Um, the price of being good. Why Black women must stop finishings. I want to talk to you today about a conversation that shook me to my core. A conversation with LaShawn Richardson, YouTube not but shock to you to won't. A visionary leader who is not just changing lives, they are dismantling the very systems that have kept Black women trapped in cycles of overgiving, under receiving, and chronic depletion. LaShawn's work is a revolution. They are helping women retire the good girl who finishes last narrative and step boldly into reciprocity, boundaries, and self worth. Their impact is reshaping entire communities, transforming how Black women navigate professional spaces, entrepreneurship, and relationships. And today, I want to share what I learned from them in a way that might just change how you see your own life. Let me start with something that sounds almost too simple to be revolutionary. Your worth is not earned by overgiving. I know, I know you have heard versions of this before, but stay with me because what LaShawn revealed goes deeper than any motivational quote you have ever seen on social media. Here's what we do not talk about enough. Black women, particularly those of us navigating corporate America, entrepreneurship, and family life, have been socialized into a very specific script. We are taught from the time we are young that our value is proven through service, through being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who holds it all together while everyone else falls apart. We watch our mothers do it, we watch our grandmothers do it, and we internalize a dangerous equation. Strength equals depletion, and love equals sacrifice without reciprocity. This is not just about being tired. This is about a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be valuable. And the cost is our health, our joy, our peace, our very lives. LaShawn shared stories with me that will sound familiar to many of you. Let me tell you about a woman, a Black woman founder of a small consulting firm who built her entire business on the foundation of being the dependable one. She spent years over delivering and undercharging, convinced that her worth had to be proven over and over again through constant availability and endless yes. She was always on call, always saying yes to extra requests, always carrying the emotional weight of every project. And here is the part that will break your heart. She felt guilty every single time she tried to rest or decline an additional ask, terrified that she would be seen as ungrateful or difficult. Does this sound like anyone you know? Maybe it sounds like you. This woman grew up watching her mother and grandmother do it all without asking for help. She internalized the belief that a good Black woman proves her worth through constant service. When she launched her business, she simply transferred that family script into her client relationships, equating overgiving with professionalism. She did not see it as a choice. She saw it as the only way to be seen as good. Her story mirrors a pattern that research on Black women's burnout has documented extensively. When strength means constant depletion, when being good means abandoning your own needs, the cost is not just exhaustion, it is chronic stress, anxiety, physical strain, and a revenue ceiling that never breaks because your pricing and boundaries do not reflect the true scope of your brilliance. But here's where the story gets interesting. This founder did not just burn out and walk away. She made a decision that felt radical at the time, but should be standard practice. She redefined her standards. She worked with a coach and therapist to establish clear boundaries around time, access, and pricing. She implemented written scopes of work, set office hours, and created a rule that any extra work required a paid change order, not an emotional negotiation. Think about that for a moment. She decided that her time, her energy, her expertise had a price, and that price was not negotiable based on someone else's comfort or convenience. Within a year, everything shifted. She reduced her client load, increased her average contract value, and reported better sleep, more joy in her work, and improved health markers. And here is what is crucial: the clients who valued her boundaries stayed and referred others. The ones who were primarily takers naturally fell away. She went on to land contracts with larger organizations that respected her rates and time. She began speaking publicly about burnout and boundaries for Black women in business. Her firm became known not just for high quality work, but for modeling healthy reciprocal partnerships. And her shift inspired other Black women entrepreneurs in her network to raise their prices, set clearer boundaries, and stop normalizing martyrdom as a business strategy. Collectively, this began to challenge the expectation that Black women in professional spaces must always do more for less to be seen as good. This brings me to the second insight LaShawn shared, and it is one that should be written on every office wall, every business plan, every relationship contract. Reciprocity is a requirement, not a reward. Let me say that again because we have been conditioned to think otherwise. Reciprocity is a requirement, not a reward. In both love and leadership, reciprocity looks like shared emotional labor, fair pay, mutual support, and people who adjust their behavior when you state your limits instead of punishing you for them. It is not something you earn after years of proving yourself. It is the baseline standard for any relationship, role, or contract worth your time. LaShawn introduced me to another story, this time of a Black woman mid level leader in a large corporation. She became the unofficial fixer for every crisis, every diversity effort, every extra committee, often without added compensation or title. She was praised as the one who gets it done, but behind the scenes, she felt invisible, overused, and under-supported. The organization leaned on her cultural competence and relationship skills while treating her contributions as optional extras rather than core leadership work. Sound familiar? This is the invisible labor that Black women carry in professional spaces every single day. The mentoring, the committee work, the crisis cleanup, the emotional labor of making everyone else comfortable. And it is rarely recognized, rarely compensated, and rarely rewarded with advancement. From early in her career, she had been rewarded for being the nice, accommodating colleague who smoothed over conflicts and took on extra tasks to protect the team. Over time, that pattern trained others to expect her constant yes, even when it came at the expense of her own growth and well being. She battled emotional exhaustion, stress related health issues, installed career advancement because her invisible labor was not formally recognized or rewarded. But this leader did something that changed everything. She started tracking her unpaid labor. She documented every committee, every mentoring session, every crisis she cleaned up, and she presented it to leadership as part of her performance review. She set new boundaries, declining non essential tasks unless they came with clear authority, resources, or advancement opportunities, and leadership responded. They restructured her role, formally recognizing her contributions, adjusting her compensation, and hiring additional staff to share the workload. She reported feeling less resentful, more energized, and more aligned with roles that matched both her values and her capacity. But the impact did not stop there. She helped design new policies around workload distribution and recognition of invisible labor, particularly for Black women and other employees of color. She mentored younger Black professionals on how to negotiate for reciprocity and advocate for themselves without apology. Her changes contributed to a broader cultural shift in the company, where boundaries, fair credit, and shared responsibility became part of leadership conversations. This helped chip away at the expectation that Black women leaders must be endlessly accommodating to be seen as valuable. This is what reciprocity looks like in practice. It is not about being difficult or demanding. It is about refusing to accept a dynamic where your brilliance is extracted without fair exchange. Now, here is the third insight from LaShawn, and it is the one that ties everything together. Boundaries are how givers win. Experts who study the strong Black woman trope emphasize that learning to say no, delegate, and slow down is not selfish, but necessary for survival and long term success. For entrepreneurs and professionals, this means setting hard limits around time, access, pricing, and emotional labor so that your brilliance, not your exhaustion, becomes your brand. LaShawn shared the story of a Black woman therapist and coach who noticed that many of her clients shared the same pattern: overgiving in romantic relationships while also overfunctioning at work. She decided to restructure both her personal life and her practice around reciprocity, rest, and emotional honesty. Personally, she had been in a long term relationship where she carried the majority of emotional, financial, and logistical labor. Professionally, she found herself holding space for everyone else's trauma while neglecting her own need for rest, joy, and community support. She was the professional caretaker, and like so many of us, she felt guilty whenever she needed to step back. Her own story echoed many of her clients. Raised to be helpful, polite, and accommodating, she learned early that being good meant minimizing her needs. When she became a therapist, that script intensified as she became a professional caretaker, often feeling guilty when she needed to step back. But informed by research on Black women's burnout and the need for radical self care, she made a choice. She ended relationships that were consistently one sided and recentered her life around mutuality. In her practice, she shortened her work days, built in recovery time, and integrated boundary setting and reciprocity as core pillars of her programs for clients. The outcomes were transformative. She reported feeling more emotionally grounded, more creative in her work, and more open to relationships that honored her as a whole person, not just the giver. And her clients began to mirror this shift. They started leaving draining relationships, renegotiating roles at work, and choosing partners and collaborators who reciprocated care and effort. She developed group programs specifically for Black women professionals, focused on dismantling the good girl who finishes last narrative and practicing reciprocal relationships. Her work gained recognition in mental health and coaching circles for centering the unique pressures on Black women around strength, silence, and overgiving. Her approach helped normalize conversations about boundaries, reciprocity, and emotional safety in both romantic and professional relationships for Black women. This contributed to a growing movement that frames self preservation not as selfishness, but as a necessary foundation for sustainable leadership and love. This is the power of boundaries. They do not just protect you, they teach others how to value you. So, what does all of this mean for you sitting here today, listening to these stories? It means that if a relationship, role, or contract requires you to abandon your needs to keep it, it is too expensive, no matter how good or loyal you have been. It means that the days of finishing last because you were taught to be the good one are over if you decide they are. LaShawn's work is helping women across the country recognize that self preservation is not selfishness. It is the necessary foundation for sustainable leadership and love. It is the difference between burning out and burning bright. Here's what I need you to understand: this is not just about individual transformation, this is about collective liberation. Every time a Black woman sets a boundary and holds it, she is not just protecting herself, she is rewriting the script for the next generation. Every time a Black woman demands reciprocity in her relationships and her work, she is challenging a system that has profited from her depletion. Every time a Black woman chooses rest over hustle, softness over survival, she is engaging in an act of resistance. Because the truth is, the world benefits when Black women are exhausted. The world benefits when Black women say yes to everything and ask for nothing in return. The world benefits when Black women equate their value with how much they can endure, but you do not have to participate in that system anymore. I want you to take a hard look at every space where you are the good one who finishes last. Ask yourself, where am I overgiving? And what would change if I required reciprocity here? Then I want you to choose one concrete boundary this week, one no you will honor, one rate you will not go below, one relationship you will no longer carry alone. And I want you to commit to it out loud to yourself or a trusted friend as a declaration that your days of finishing last are over. Because here is the truth that LaShawn Richardson is helping women everywhere understand: your brilliance deserves reciprocity, your time deserves respect, and your softness deserves protection. The world taught you survival. Now it is time to teach yourself how to thrive. Stop being good, start being free.